Hey there YouTube, welcome back to another black powder update. This was originally meant to be my second video of the day, but I'm doing a sort of a reshoot of it. It probably will still end up being the second in line in the sort of video line. Let's get that straight down to business. So this is the Belgian foot artillery battery, which is a part of the 2nd Brigade. It's commanded by a Captain JJ Lux, and it is made up of everything elite. So we have elite guns and we have elite crew. Now originally the guns came from a horse artillery battalion box, which I always rail on about because I think they're really good value. The guns are really well made. They're chunky and thick. However, their size is still comparable to other units' guns. So, like for instance, front rank, you'll find a front rank gun is slightly thinner in its frame, but the gun is still the same size. It's just that these guys have really chunky frames, which is why I actually ended up using them both for foot artillery. Like I said, these are the Belgian foot artillery, and they basically, for all intents and purposes, have the same uniform as the Dutch. And you can see that one of the guns here is a howitzer. Now that's because A, you actually get one in the box, and B, I do actually quite rate howitzers. I tend to, if I can, have a howitzer in a battery, and a lot of my guns do. So let's first of all start off by showing you the howitzer. This is the non-officered stand. So let's start off with the crew. So these guys were brought in separate from elite. This is the standard artillery pack. They actually do two. One standard, which comes with this figure here, and an officer version, which replaces this guy with an officer figure, which is a really good idea in my opinion, and definitely something I think that Perry should think about doing myself. You know, so when you buy an artillery piece, you can have an option of getting a crew which has a swap out figure of an officer rather than a normal crewman, and that'll help solve the age-old problem of trying to find artillery officers if you're like me and like to put an officer in a battery. They're really nice uniforms. The only real difference between the Dutch and the Belgians is that they actually have a slightly different Shako badge. Now these guys are actually Dutch foot artillery, which I ordered by accident. If they were Belgian, they would actually have a slightly different Shako badge. It would be kind of shaped like a sort of church window, and would be a lot broader and thicker, sort of a slightly thinner version of a Dutch militia badge that's very big and almost takes up the entire front of the Shako. But of course the Dutch just have a single sort of pen, more or less, on their Shakos. But I kind of got around that by just basically painting an outline around that cap badge, and it's not, maybe not 100% perfect, but then again the badge isn't particularly perfect anyway. It's kind of like a sort of a rough shape, so it's not the best thing in the world, but it does the job. Gun wise, colour, I've probably mentioned this loads of times before, but when I first started doing French artillery, some chap who was an expert on French artillery happened to be in one of the forums, and he basically gave me like the original paint recipe for mixing up the green that they used, and he said that basically the nearest sort of modern colour to that French artillery green was the colour of a French tank, and he basically just sent me a picture of a French tank. And of course this colour is Panzerace's French tank green, and I think it's a perfect match. And I've always used that for my French guns, and I think it's a great colour. It's a lot more. I know a lot of people tend to use olive green, but according to the expert, this is the on-spot colour for French artillery. So maybe if you're you know, you like to get things as realistic as possible, perhaps it's time to hunt down one of those pots of paint. It's a really nice colour, and of course if you happen to be doing a French action army, then you may already have it, so who knows. But yeah, so this is the howitzer. Always a really useful gun to have, because I believe the black powder rules say that you have to have a howitzer modelled to actually be able to use one, even though in your average battery it's generally made up of sort of 6 pounders and 1 howitzer, and that kind of goes across the board with a lot of nations. The main difference being that the French actually used a slightly different calibre howitzer, and of course the Dutch used French guns, so that's why it's always nice to have a howitzer, because like I say, they can lob their round rather than shoot it straight. So you know, one of the sort of the classic things of playing on a smaller table, black powder, is that you find that you're unless you've got lots of hills, and actually I don't actually own that many hills. It's one of my sort of terrain failings. You know, unless you put your gun up on a hill, you're not going to be able to fire it that effectively, because your troops kind of get in the way of it. So with a howitzer you can obviously lob the shell, and of course it's really useful if there's loads of troops in a house or a farm. You know, it's a lot more effective to try and howitzer them than to actually just pound them with 6 pounders. So yeah, really nice, again, really nice gun from Front Rank, not Front Rank, Elite. We have the Napoleonic sign on the back. Originally, again, I've mentioned this before, that I actually cut the barrels down. They actually came with long barreled 6 pounders, which I didn't recognise at the time. So I cut them down to like a regular size, which I presume is probably more like a sort of a medium barrel 6 pounder. But the long, you know, it was kind of my fault really. I kind of was blank to the fact that it doesn't really matter how long the gun is. It's the calibre that counts. So you know, even though it might have the same length as a 12 pounder or a 9 pounder, it's actually muzzle wise still a 6 pounder, so it doesn't really make any difference. But yeah, of course I went for the classic black barrel, which is something that a lot of artillery crews did to their guns. Even the French did as well. The sort of the French rules about guns were that if it was brass, you had to keep it really shiny and polish it. And then crews found out that they could get away with painting it black, not having to keep polishing it, and it also makes the gun blend in better on the battlefield because you're not getting that shiny bronze barrel glinting in the sun. So that's why I've given all my all the Dutch Belgian guns black barrels. Although I think perhaps there's a horse artillery battery that's still in bronze, but then those guys are flashier than the foot artillery anyway, so it doesn't make too much difference. Crew wise, again, we have the same 3 figures. This chap here was originally holding like a sort of a crowbar to help move the cannon. I didn't like that. I thought it was kind of a really defunct position. The gun's about to fire, so there's no need for you to have guys that were moving the gun. Now, I'm not sure if that guy is a position on his own. I don't think he is. I think he's just like another crew member helping to move the gun. It could actually be the fuse guy. So what I did by eliminating that metal bar just makes him go back to his original role, which he would be when the gun's about to fire. So I just think it looks better. And of course, you get an officer figure in the alternate artillery pack, like I was saying. And although I always find elite officers a little bit more funky than even the foot troops, but I think as far as elite officers go, this guy's not too bad. There is just something a bit odd about him. Maybe it's the fact that his arm's so straight, I don't know. But yeah, it's really nice to get an officer figure, and obviously it completes my battery because I like to have 1 officer per battery. So that is that. That is the final sort of unit of the battalion. There's obviously the brigade commander around at the video as well. I did him as well at the same time, so I'm not sure if this will be the first video in the line, or the brigade commander, or vice versa. And because this is a reshoot, I also actually did a third video, which is a really short. I wouldn't even call it an overview. It's more of a brief view of the whole battalion, minus the guns, because they actually go into their own box, in their really useful box. And it's quite cool to see that I managed to fit 6 battalions and the brigade commander into one 4-litre really useful box. So that's it. That's the end. I'm not really going to go too deep into it, but obviously, if you remember in my last video, I was mentioning about things going on in my life, the possibility of moving out, all that sort of stuff. That element alone is probably going to be messing around with my schedule a little bit, so I don't know if I'll actually be continuing on with my Napoleonic project short term. There may well be a break, because my painting schedule is going to be completely up in the air, and obviously at some point I'm going to have to completely break all my stuff down and pack it into boxes and stuff. Although I may well still do a video or two over the next sort of couple of months, I may well go silent for a little bit, but don't worry, I'm not going to disappear forever. I'm going to be back, and hopefully, continuing the project. I mean, this is my final sort of large-scale Napoleonic project, so it's got to go down and have a big hurrah at the end, where I'll obviously do an Allied First Corps overview. So yeah, that's the end. Thank you to all my subs and stuff. When I do sort of disappear for a while, obviously, I'm not going to be gone forever. I'm definitely going to be coming back. So don't think, oh, he's gone, I'll just unsubscribe, whatever. I'll definitely be back at some point. When, I can't really tell you at the moment. But obviously, like I say, for at least the next month, I'll put a video or two up. Yeah, who knows what the future holds. But like I say, I'll definitely be back at some point. So until next time, I'll catch you all later. Bye bye.